welcome back to the School Counseling Series podcast. I'm here with Josue Lopez, who's currently a teacher. Josue, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
This is my 15th year teaching at Daigis Elementary. I've taught grades from pretty much pre-kinder all the way to 4th grade. Currently teaching 3rd grade language arts with science.
So what educational experiences led you to become a school counselor?
I want to say it started with being in the classroom. I'm always trying to establish that relationship with students. I've always done that, listening to them. And I see the impact it makes, just getting to know them, how that impacts their learning, how that impacts them wanting to come to school. It started taking a turn, I want to say, after COVID, because we started noticing students coming in scared, not wanting to converse, everyone hiding behind a mask and very afraid to speak. At that point I was doing kinder, and usually in kinder, students like to play, they like to socialize, and it was completely the opposite. I remember giving a lesson because we started using the SELs,
Right.
So I was doing a lesson on empathy, and those students grasped it right away. And for me to see that and start thinking, if they can learn this, to learn how to take care of each other, then that showed me that pretty much that can happen anywhere.
Right.
I want to say that's kind of set the foundation for that movement. Then it started moving more to seeing the news, starting to see so many unfortunate things, teen suicide,
Right.
Students running away. That really starts impacting you, where you start feeling, am I not doing enough? I want to say that's when I really started looking more into it. I had looked into programs that focus more like on the intervention side, but I think not that it's too late at that point, but the efforts or the amount of work that it takes, it's going to be too much. So I say, I think it's better to be, working on the preventative side, So that's when I say, what to become school counselor, helping teens manage their emotions, understand alternatives, how to make decisions. And that's what really led, started pushing me more and more to seek, a school counseling degree.
Absolutely. It's fantastic to hear that you kind of saw it firsthand, being at that level, looking at what's becoming issues for the students in society today, for sure. So what has stood out to you the most, Josue, about the Master of Science in School Counseling here at Texas A&M International University?
I want to say it starts by the leading with it by example. As school counselor, we're going to be expected, to teach with empathy, to listen to students, to let the students be their own, learning, where they learn from themselves, bringing that learning from within. And I was able to see that throughout the counseling program. It's a lot of questioning and answering. When we had doubts, when we had questions, the professors would ask you, well, what do you think? And then how would you rationalize that? And when you start thinking like that, it really starts expanding your mindset and understanding the concept a little bit better. I want to say that's also the attention to detail whenever we had questions, when the material or something that we quite didn't understand that well. It's how the professors took their time to explaining it, And it always felt more like working with colleagues and learning from each other than a, professor to student type of thing. That felt really welcoming, where you can break up a situation and any professor would explain, very calmly, they saw you or they interacted with you more like a co-worker, someone that you're in this together. So that was really helpful, especially when you're coming into something that you don't totally understand or know, like just to hear the professors or to have that interactions made you feel that whatever you understood, it had made sense.
Right.
And it just kind of gave you that, what's it called, that not necessarily energy, but just that understanding, I got this. That encouragement to continue.
I'm glad you shared that with us, Josue, because I think it's important to recognize sometimes that there could be a different dynamic, within a graduate school program where there could be individuals that don't necessarily see it the same way as you do. So I'm glad you're providing us with that feedback. We really appreciate you doing so. What do you believe the role of a school counselor is?
I think the role of the school counselor is it's to focus on the overall well-being of the students. It's that bridge between the social of the student and their learning, and ensuring that all their social needs are being met, helping the student be self-managed, so they can be a participant in the classroom setting. I see the school counselor as a guide, growing up, some of us, were told to hide your emotions. We really didn't learn how to manage emotions or identify emotions. So I think the role of the school counselor is exposing us to that, saying, what, emotions are okay. Being sad is okay. Crying it's okay. Laughing is okay.
Yeah.
And going over that and teaching us how to manage those, how to understand those. I think that's most the issue and like the importance of the school counselor. Not only helping students, also helping teachers, say, hey, you got this, you need help, why we're here. And just having someone to converse that can, they can help teachers see a different point of view, from the student's perspective, like, hey, have you considered this? Yeah. And that can be very meaningful.
Yeah. And in some cases, school counselors can serve as like a mediator or anything like that. So, and it seems like, and the way you explained it was great, to really look at ways that they can communicate and express their emotions, and being able to do that, because a lot of times teachers can't even do that, so it's kind of good to have somebody that's there serving in the school counseling capacity that can assist with that, with the students and the teachers, for sure. Yes. So using any of the 4 delivery components of individual planning, guidance curriculum, or system support, or responsive services, how do you plan on integrating the Texas Comprehensive Model for college and career readiness?
I think to start off, we would go with the guidance and curriculum. And most of, at least in our situation, I see that most students need that exposure of understanding or knowing that there's other careers, there's other, if you ask any student, like, and I ask them every year, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they say, oh, police officer, doctor, teacher. And it seems like they're stuck in that mindset, that those are the only 3 careers that exist. So as far as for the curriculum, I would focus on that, exposing them to different type of careers, different types of degrees, different types of colleges, and for them to be aware that, there's a whole world out there.
Yeah.
From there, it's on the individual planning. It's meeting with the students, asking them their interests, and guiding them, or showcasing, look, you're interested in math, have you thought about engineering, how you considered this, and also to continue with that exposure. And based on their likes and wants, whatever they have the most interest in on, then I would plan for that and say, well, what you had mentioned previously that you were interested in engineering, look, there's are good engineering schools.
Right.
As far as for the support, I think that now that we have that technology, we can integrate like a website or a hub, where we can have all that information, based on student interest, where they can just log in and see it guided at their own pace, self-paced, self-managed on that.
Absolutely. Thanks for the examples of each one of those, because I think it's important to have a good idea of what that looks like to provide that information in different settings for different individuals, for sure. So how would you describe social emotional learning and the importance of implementing it into your comprehensive school counseling program?
Social emotional learning, I want to say it focuses on understanding our emotions, being able to identify them and understand them. As incorporating into the counseling program, it's focusing on that, first to be able to identify the emotions. Because us, I think as adults, sometimes we don't understand that sometimes we're feeling nervous and we're upset, and we just need to take a moment and say, am I upset? Am I nervous? And if we're doing that as adults, that I've had experience, thinking about these children, when they're nervous about a test and they're showing that aggressiveness and they don't quite understand why they're upset, they don't understand what's going on. It's teaching them about being able to identify that, where they can take, some time and think and process, what am I feeling, what's bothering me, and for them to be able to understand that, all emotions are acceptable, and for them to work from there and say, okay, identify the problem. This is the problem that's causing me. This is what's getting me upset. This is what's getting me nervous. And for them to have a plan on how to deal with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and learning how to do that is so key. And I think being a school counselor is you're in prime position to provide that knowledge, to give that knowledge base to the students, and even serve in that supportive role for teachers as well, which is definitely important. How do you anticipate serving as like a social emotional leader and like a mental health professional in working in the school counseling capacity?
I think it's focusing on that, on providing that information, helping them finding key ways to fully understand that, like fully understand emotions, for them to see the different ways of reacting. How do we respond to different situations, and teaching that. So I see that as a leader is presenting, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and meeting with those students, meeting with teachers, and so they can further explain that through the classroom setting.
Mm-hmm. And that's so important to have that ability to do that, for sure. So moving forward, looking at what would it look like for you to kind of integrate the 5 core social emotional learning capacities and competencies of like self-awareness, self-regulation, self-management, empathy, social awareness into your comprehensive school counseling program?
To start, we start with the individual self, and the students of being able to identify. It's key important that as individuals identify our emotions, say, okay, this is what's happening, and then from there you move into the self-management. How am I going to manage my emotions? Understanding what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, when is it acceptable, when it's not acceptable, and that's a key difference, because some behaviors are okay to do at school, some are not okay. Some things are more of a setting for at home. But other than being an individual, students need to understand that they're part of a community. That their behaviors, their actions, have a reaction or can affect someone else. Right. And same thing, the other students can affect their behaviors. So and understanding that they're part of that culture, they're part of that group setting, and being able to be aware that others have feelings, and to be able to be respectful to those feelings. And I think that's one thing that we're lacking in schools, where the students need to understand that it's not just about them, it's about, hey, we're part of a community. Many times, you hear teachers, students, wanting about a classroom setting or about school culture. But it seems that everyone wants a school culture that's positive and welcoming, but not everyone wants to be part of that labor. It's labor intense, but it takes everyone to be part of that. So it's bringing that awareness, saying, what, you're part of a group, you need to provide that service. And it's not only about receiving or for you feeling welcome, but you making everyone else feel welcome. Yeah. So that's what I would focus on, the awareness, that they were aware that this is about others, and making sure that everyone else is feeling welcome at the same time. Yeah. And from there, we move on to the decision making. And many times, I want to say as teachers, we want to provide an answer to a student, but we're providing a disservice to them because we're never making them individual thinkers. And I think that's when students understand their emotions, they understand that their actions, can affect someone. When they understand that they're part of a culture, they're part of an environment, of a group setting, it's teaching them, what are your choices, and each choice has a consequence. Have you evaluated each consequence? Have you evaluated each output? If you select option A, what's going to happen versus option B? And teaching them those decision-making skills can be very beneficial. Obviously, from there, we have the conflict resolution, for students to be able to resolve their own conflicts. Growing up, my parents never had discussions in front of us, in front of me and my brothers. And part of it, you say, well, that's good, but in one sense, I never saw how, conflict management occurred. And students need to see that, even when there's a disagreement between a teacher and a student, how do you handle that? Where the student can see, like that their decisions are being respected. It's not always, the teacher being right. It's having that communication back and forth. That if they have a different idea, they can present it in a different manner, that they can be respected. That they're individuals, that their ideas are going to be respected. It all depends on your presentation, what you're bringing up, and having students, just like teachers and anyone, understand that how do we solve conflict, in a respectable manner.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I like the examples that you used about, making sure that there's like a collaborative effort for students as a whole, like as a student body, but also the school and creating that positive culture, but also taking ownership of their own individuals' behaviors and how they're aware of those emotions and how it's perceived by others. So it makes a lot of sense that you're thinking about how you're incorporating it. And you're really already doing that as a teacher, but I think you're going to continue to do that as a school counselor as well. So is there any advice that you would give to anybody that's thinking about becoming a school counselor?
I want to say do it. I mean, the need is there, I think that if you already have that and you think, and you're already thinking about it, it's because you have that calling, you have that in you, to help others. The way I see it now is that even though that I'm pretty much already completed, I see now that any moment that I'm waiting, of becoming a school counselor, it's one student that's missing out on someone that can, a student that can benefit from that. Mm-hmm. So I see that need is there, so we need all the help we can get, When we see troubled children, or students, we can't just blame them and say like, oh, look at what they're doing.
Right.
We need to think, it says, what am I doing, or how come I'm not doing enough? So for those of you thinking of doing school culture, those students need you, and they will benefit from having someone, to speak to, someone to guide them, someone to listen to them. Yeah. So most definitely.
And even if you have an impact on only one student as a school counseling person, then yeah, when you're a school counselor and you're impacting at least one student, you're making a difference.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. I can see you doing that for sure. Anything else you'd like to share with us, Josue?
No. As far as the counseling goes, I think, like I mentioned, it's something that we need to start implementing more. We can't have enough of that in school systems. Currently, we're doing like SEL, so mm-hmm. But it's like a 5-10 minute thing, and it's just not enough. It's students need more of the counseling, of understanding, how to regulate their emotions, how to behave, how to make decisions, and I just hope that it gets more, that students are provided with more opportunities, mm-hmm. To be socially aware of their emotions, for them to have experiences or learning opportunities, of understanding emotions, understanding their behaviors, and, providing all these decision makings. I just like that idea, that mm-hmm. that it's becoming more and more aware that we're, as a society, we're accepting that more, that mental health is an issue.
Yeah. And I think being a part of an individual's life in an early stage and making sure there's an awareness, like you were saying, and recognition of their emotions and how that plays out in different facets of their life as they're going through the maturation process, and even when they're adults, when they're getting and grasping those types of ideas earlier on, I think it's so positive, and that can help to contribute to the success that they experience later on in life.
Oh, yeah. And I see that all these new skills that the students are learning, it's a preventive measures, right. From them becoming, anything that we see in society now that's wrong. They would see like, oh, teens would say, well, what do we start preventing that before? What do we start, equipping students with skills, of how to manage their emotions, how to control, how to seek help, when it's get overwhelming. How do we incorporate that in schools, that asking for help, is okay, because sometimes, at least growing up, as part of our culture, just seemed wrong, to seek help. Just like, oh, you're talking to the school counselor, oh, you mm-hmm. need help. And for it to become something so norm, that going to a counselor, speaking out is okay.
Right. Absolutely. And I think it's a great opportunity to kind of have that awareness for children to understand that it is okay to do that, for sure. Well, I'd like to thank you again once, Josue, for actually taking the time to be with us and share your experience and your background information with us. So thank you so much for being here.
Yes, of course.
Appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this School Counseling Series podcast, feel free to like it below and subscribe to the School Counseling Series podcast. And we have a link below to the School Counseling program here at Texas A&M International University. Thanks again for watching.
Produced by Podcast Architects.